The Fatherhood Principle by Dr. Myles Munroe. In The Fatherhood Principle, Dr. Myles Munroe offers a stirring and emotionally grounded examination of how the loss and distortion of fatherhood has deeply wounded families and societies, while unveiling a redemptive vision rooted in divine design. In The Fatherhood Principle, Dr. Myles Munroe argues that many social and personal crises stem from a breakdown in authentic fatherhood. He presents fatherhood as a divine concept rather than merely a biological function. The book explains that fathers are designed to impart identity, purpose, protection, and discipline. Munroe connects father absence to emotional insecurity, crime, and societal instability. He emphasizes that true fatherhood reflects God's nature as a loving and guiding father. The author critiques cultural shifts that have diminished paternal responsibility. He distinguishes between male presence and true fatherly engagement. Munroe teaches that leadership in the home begins with love and accountability. The book explores how children thrive under consistent fatherly affirmation. It also addresses the pain of broken family structures. Munroe offers hope for restoration through understanding divine principles. He encourages men to reclaim their role with maturity. The work highlights mentorship as an extension of fatherhood. Ultimately, the book calls for global restoration of authentic fatherhood. This book fits within Munroe's broader teachings on purpose, leadership, and kingdom principles. Rather than approaching fatherhood sociologically, he frames it spiritually and morally. The book responds to what he identifies as a widespread fatherless generation. Munroe seeks not to condemn, but to restore. His tone balances urgency with compassion. The message applies to biological fathers, mentors, and community leaders alike. Chapter 1: The Crisis of Fatherlessness. Munroe opens by examining the global consequences of absent and disengaged fathers. He presents fatherlessness as a root cause of many social challenges, including violence, insecurity, and broken relationships. Through observations and biblical insight, he demonstrates how the lack of paternal guidance leaves children searching for identity and affirmation. The chapter stresses that fatherlessness is not only physical absence but emotional disengagement as well. Munroe challenges readers to recognize the urgency of restoring fatherhood. He frames the crisis as both a social and spiritual emergency. This chapter establishes the seriousness of the issue and prepares readers for deeper exploration of fatherhood's role. Chapter 2: God as the Original Father. This chapter explores the concept of God as the ultimate model of fatherhood. Munroe explains that human fatherhood is meant to reflect divine characteristics such as love, provision, correction, and guidance. He uses scripture to illustrate God's intentional design in creating fathers as representatives of his care on earth. The chapter emphasizes that understanding God's fatherhood helps heal wounds caused by earthly fathers. Munroe shows that divine fatherhood restores identity and worth. He encourages readers to view God not as distant but relational. This chapter forms the theological foundation for the rest of the book. Chapter 3: The Role of the Father in Identity Formation. Munroe focuses on how fathers shape a child's sense of self. He explains that affirmation from a father builds confidence and security. The chapter discusses how neglect or criticism damages self-worth. Munroe connects fatherly words and actions to long-term emotional health. He emphasizes the importance of presence and encouragement. Through biblical examples, he illustrates how fathers impart destiny. This chapter highlights the father's influence beyond material provision. It reinforces the necessity of intentional engagement in a child's life. Chapter 4: The Power of Fatherly Presence. In this chapter, Munroe emphasizes that presence is one of the most powerful gifts a father can offer. He explains that children do not merely need financial support but consistent emotional and physical involvement. The chapter explores how time spent with children builds trust, security, and openness. Munroe warns that absence creates emotional voids often filled by negative influences. He illustrates how engaged fathers shape character and values through everyday interactions. The author stresses that presence communicates worth and belonging. This chapter challenges modern distractions that pull fathers away from family responsibilities. It reinforces that meaningful relationships are built through intentional involvement. Chapter 5: Discipline as an Expression of Love. Munroe reframes discipline not as punishment but as loving correction meant to guide children toward maturity. He explains that boundaries provide safety and clarity. The chapter discusses how neglecting discipline leads to confusion and rebellion. Munroe draws from biblical principles to show that correction reflects care rather than anger. He encourages fathers to discipline consistently and fairly. The chapter also addresses balancing firmness with compassion. Munroe emphasizes that proper discipline builds respect and responsibility. This section highlights the father's role in shaping moral character. Chapter 6, Restoring Broken Father-Child Relationships. This chapter offers hope for healing strained or damaged family relationships. Munroe acknowledges the deep pain caused by abandonment and abuse. He explains that restoration begins with forgiveness and humility. The chapter encourages fathers to take responsibility for past mistakes. Munroe discusses the importance of honest communication and patience. He presents God as the ultimate healer of emotional wounds. The chapter reassures readers that broken bonds can be rebuilt over time. It emphasizes reconciliation as a powerful testimony of love. Chapter 7, Fatherhood and Leadership in the Home. Munroe connects fatherhood to servant leadership rather than domination. He explains that fathers are called to lead by example, integrity, and service. The chapter explores how leadership in the home sets the tone for the entire family. Munroe stresses that authority should be exercised with wisdom and humility. He discusses the impact of strong leadership on stability and harmony. The author challenges cultural stereotypes of masculinity. This chapter reinforces that true leadership reflects God's character. Chapter 8, Mentorship as Extended Fatherhood. Here, Munroe broadens fatherhood beyond biological relationships. He explains that mentorship allows men to impart wisdom to younger generations. The chapter highlights the importance of positive male role models. Munroe discusses how spiritual fathers guide, encourage, and protect. He connects mentorship to legacy building. The author encourages men to invest in others intentionally. This chapter underscores community responsibility in nurturing youth. It expands the book's message beyond traditional family structures. Chapter 9, Building a Legacy Through Fatherhood. Munroe focuses on the long-term impact of fatherhood. He explains that a father's influence extends beyond his lifetime through values passed on. The chapter discusses legacy as spiritual and moral inheritance rather than wealth alone. Munroe encourages fathers to think generationally. He emphasizes teaching children principles that sustain future families. The chapter calls for intentional living. It reinforces fatherhood as an investment in society's future. Chapter 10, The Restoration of the Fatherhood Principle. The final chapter synthesizes the book's themes into a call for action. Munroe urges men to reclaim their divine role with courage and responsibility. He emphasizes that restoring fatherhood can transform communities. The chapter highlights God's grace in enabling change. Munroe closes with hope for a healed generation. He challenges readers to apply the principles practically. This conclusion reinforces the urgency and promise of restoration. One of the most compelling strengths of the Fatherhood Principle is its deliberate structural flow. Dr. Myles Munroe organizes the book in a progression that mirrors both diagnosis and restoration. The early chapters confront the crisis of fatherlessness and establish God as the original model of fatherhood. This foundation is crucial, as it prevents the book from becoming merely a social commentary. Instead, Munroe frames fatherhood as a spiritual principle before exploring its human application. The middle chapters shift from theology to practice, addressing presence, discipline, healing, and leadership. This transition is smooth and purposeful. Rather than overwhelming readers with abstract ideals, Munroe gradually equips them with practical expressions of fatherhood. The final chapters elevate the discussion toward mentorship, legacy, and societal transformation, expanding fatherhood beyond the nuclear family to a generational responsibility. This layered approach creates momentum. Readers are not simply informed about a problem. They are guided toward becoming part of the solution. The book reads like a journey from brokenness to hope, reinforcing its emotional resonance and practical relevance. Although nonfiction, Munroe's writing conveys a strong sense of personal authority and pastoral care. His voice blends the conviction of a leader with the compassion of a mentor. He does not approach fatherhood from a position of condemnation but from restoration. Munroe consistently positions himself alongside the reader, acknowledging pain, confusion, and cultural failure without assigning blame. This relational tone builds trust and keeps the message accessible even when addressing sensitive topics such as abandonment and emotional wounds. What stands out most is his steady emphasis on responsibility paired with grace. He challenges men firmly to rise into their roles while reminding them that change is possible through divine empowerment. This balance prevents the book from becoming either harshly moralistic or overly sentimental. Several interconnected themes give the book depth and coherence. The first is identity. Munroe repeatedly demonstrates how fathers shape a child's understanding of self-worth and purpose. Identity is not presented as self-generated but imparted through affirmation, guidance, and example. Another major theme is presence. The book insists that emotional and physical engagement matters more than material provision. Munroe's emphasis on consistent involvement challenges modern distractions and redefines success in fatherhood. Restoration is also central. Rather than accepting broken families as permanent, Munroe emphasizes healing through forgiveness, accountability, and renewed commitment. This gives the book its hopeful tone. Leadership emerges as a redefining concept. Munroe rejects authoritarian models and replaces them with servant leadership rooted in love and integrity. This theme connects fatherhood to broader social stability. Finally, legacy expands fatherhood beyond individual households into generational influence. Fathers are portrayed as builders of future communities through values and mentorship. Munroe's style is direct, passionate, and accessible. He avoids dense theological jargon, favoring clear language that resonates with everyday readers. His use of repetition reinforces central ideas without becoming monotonous. The pacing is steady, allowing readers time to reflect on each principle before advancing. Emotional moments are balanced with instructional clarity, keeping the narrative engaging yet grounded. A representative passage reflects this balance of urgency and hope. When a father is absent, a child grows up searching for what only a father was designed to give identity, affirmation, and direction. But when a father rises to his responsibility, generations can be transformed. This succinctly captures the heart of Munroe's message. While many books address parenting, the Fatherhood Principle stands out by framing fatherhood as a divine principle rather than merely a social role. Munroe's integration of spiritual design with practical responsibility offers a deeper framework than typical family advice literature. Rather than focusing solely on techniques, he addresses the root of brokenness: misunderstanding of identity and purpose. This gives the book lasting relevance beyond cultural trends. When compared to James Dobson's parenting works, Munroe's approach is more spiritually foundational. Dobson emphasizes psychological development and discipline strategies, while Munroe focuses on divine identity and leadership as the core of fatherhood. In contrast to Gary Chapman's relational emphasis in the 5 love languages, Munroe broadens the scope by connecting emotional connection to generational responsibility and societal transformation. These comparisons highlight Munroe's unique blend of theology, leadership, and family restoration. This book will resonate strongly with fathers seeking to grow in responsibility and emotional engagement. Men who experience fatherlessness may find healing and clarity in Munroe's teachings. Pastors, counselors, and mentors will also benefit from its principles. The Fatherhood Principle is a powerful and timely exploration of one of society's most critical needs. Dr. Myles Munroe succeeds in diagnosing the root causes of broken families while offering a hopeful, actionable path toward restoration. Its strength lies in combining spiritual insight with practical application, making fatherhood both a divine calling and a daily commitment. The book avoids simplistic solutions and instead calls for intentional growth, responsibility, and love.